to Cosmic Confluence, where we explore the sacred intersection of science, spirit, and the human experience. I'm your host, Sana, as always, and today's episode dives deep into a topic that's far more common and far more silenced than many realize: female urinary incontinence. And joining me is someone whose personal story became the foundation of his groundbreaking professional path, Dr. Nigel Brayer, DC, PhD, FIAMA, FIAMA. He is the creator of the Ironclad Bladder System, which is a natural, drug free approach that blends neurology with the traditional Chinese medicine. But more than that, he is a husband, a father, and in his own words, a reluctant bladder doctor whose wife's journey led him down a healing path that's now helping thousands of women reclaim their lives. And as someone who regularly explores the mind body connection and the impact of unspoken trauma on physical health, I have been deeply moved by Dr. Brayer's story, especially the vulnerability it took to meet his wife, not just with solutions, but with empathy. So, whether you are navigating this experience yourself or you know someone who is, I invite you to lean in. This is more about the bladder health. It's about returning to vitality, nature, and the power of being seen in this universe. So, with that, Dr. Nigel, welcome to the show. And as always, it is such an honor to have you with us.
Thank you, Sana. I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation today.
Okay. So, Dr. Brayer, first off, your story with your wife, Brandy, it is incredibly touching. I mean, we have touched upon your journey on so many of our shows, but what I have learned from your journey is healing begins when someone finally feels safe enough to share what's been kept in the shadows. I think there cannot be, uh, you know, a better option or solution than that. So that moment between you and Brandy, it feels like it cracked something open, not just emotionally but energetically. So what's your thought on this?
Yeah, you know what, Sana? I love your perspective on that because it's so much broader than just her and I. And so, those opportunities that we have is we think we're alone and we're the only ones and the only people who have these problems. And then what happens is once you realize and I'll say like shine the light on it or have overcome the fear to look at the problem, you realize that so many other people have that same issue. And as it applies to urinary incontinence and bladder health, is most people keep it as a secret and hide it, which is, in my opinion, very very sad. Simply because as you hide things in the closet, there's no opportunity for it to be resolved either physically or mentally and emotionally. So my personal story is with my wife is we make the assumptions that as spouses, things are just shared. But you have to remember that even though you might live in the same home and you spend years together, is we all have our barriers that we've kind of subconsciously put like walls around. And so I think the biggest thing that first allowed me to make the Ironclad Bladder program, which came later, was helping me to realize, wow, my wife of many years of marriage didn't feel comfortable sharing it with me. So was it because, I didn't allow that to happen?
Mhm.
Or was it because she had so much guilt associated with the ability to hold her bladder that that didn't allow it to occur? So that's a big topic because so much of our life experience is trying to avoid our injuries and our wounds. And I think most people, unfortunately, live their life unconsciously that way. So they're busily trying to avoid I'll call them their hot spots. So I don't want anybody to find out that I feel inadequate, or I don't want anyone to find out that I'm not the perfect representation that I put out on social media, or all those different things that put up barriers. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely, Dr. Nigel. And how do you interpret that moment with Brandy through the lens of divine alignment or cosmic redirection?
Well, Senna, I'll speak personally, is I think everything is divine alignment. Um, so in my observation and practice now for 28 years almost, is after the science has been established and you start looking, you find that you really resonate people resonate with the energy that they put out. So I think when people are looking for healing, let's say they pray to whatever they believe, created them and whatnot, is as they open themselves up to answers, the projection of energy that they are putting out into the universe changes. Therefore, they're more open. So I read something really interesting is it said, and it makes a lot of sense to me. It says our body and our minds are like an electrical current. So if you think of an electrical current in your, outlet of your wall, it's sending out electrons out into space to run a appliance or a lamp or a television or whatever it might be. But
Mhm.
every electrical current has a corresponding magnetic field.
Yes.
So for me, that's like mind blowing because when we're sending out energy, whether it be love or whether it be hate or whether it be kindness or it be empathy or whether it be revenge, we're sending out electrical currents of vibration out into the universe. And those are creating corresponding electromagnetic fields. So they're drawing to you what you're putting back out. So back to Brandy and I's example is she was having problems and deep down she had a desire to find an answer. And that's part of kind of my platform is to help women to know there is an answer because most people, when you think about the energy of defeat, if somebody believes there's no answer or doesn't seek to find an answer or just gives up, well, that's also an energy of projection. So you're going to attract more things that confirm that idea. So I think in Brandy's case is deep down she had a desire. She didn't accept that this is just part of motherhood or part of aging or part of hormonal changes. She thought in her heart of hearts, hey, there has to be something that's an available option. And in my perspective is that's what kind of opened her capacity to be able to share with me. So it's kind of a reciprocal thing. Um, my personality is that I like to help people and I like to solve problems so that people's lives are better. And I think Brandy had to come to the point where she wasn't just throwing in the towel and giving up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I guess uh, the most sacred shifts, they often come from, I mean, I'm not just making a general statement, but what I've seen or learned from many of the conversations that they come from pain or confusion. It's almost like the universe whispering that this is where your healing begins to.
Yeah, and I agree with that 100% because, and I don't know if anyone's read the Course in Miracles over the years, but is that has some pretty deep truths in there, and it says that we can learn through pain or we can learn through love. The choice is really up to us, but pain also is very motivational. So again, I've been a doctor for a long time and other health conditions, what's the motivating factor for people to change? Is it proactive behavior? For some, but not that common. Usually it's some symptom. So some pain that motivates a person to change, and that could be an emotional pain, it could be a physical pain. So unfortunately, as human beings, I believe pain is one of our biggest motivators, even though we don't really necessarily have to go in that direction, but most of us do, me included.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, Dr. Nigel, you mentioned about discovering this missing link between the brain and bladder through traditional Chinese medicine. Do you feel that ancient systems like TCM, they offer us a more sacred language for the body, one that even modern science or medicine it tends to forget?
Absolutely. So I like to look at things on a spectrum. So I live in America, and everything, not everything, but a lot of America, especially in healthcare, is it's all black, white, it's all physiology based. Physiology meaning how the parts are working, how they're functioning, et cetera, et cetera. And so, but if you've been around for long enough and just have been generally observant, you realize there's so much of life that you can't um, quantify with the simple measurement techniques and tools that we have. So you think about it this way, is a microscope only goes a few thousand power down, but as you go deeper and deeper and look at things at an electronic or microscopic level that are so small we can't even measure it, that's where real life begins. So I believe ancient China or traditional Chinese medicine from the years past is it was all based upon general ideas that they couldn't quantify. So it was very, I'll say, esoteric.
Okay.
Modern medicine has become very physical. I don't think either one has the perfect answer, but you can't have, I think the answer lies somewhere in between. Is looking at physiology, anatomy is very important, but it's not the whole story. Looking at the esoterics and the spirituality of it all is it holds a lot of the answers, but it's in the physical realm where we are. It doesn't hold all the answers either. It's kind of a mixture of both. And I think in American modern medicine is we're missing a huge component that's preventing us from getting where we want to go, which is the power of the mind and the power of spirit, which could be called energy, could be called the ether, could be called God, whatever person wants to name it. So that's where I found in my protocol the biggest missing link were is people are busily looking at the bladder only and the valves and the muscles and the pelvis. And that's a valuable tool, but you're missing a huge component of how the nervous system influences it without you even paying attention. Kind of like the nervous system's busily beating your heart without you paying attention. So it wasn't until I started to address that component that our results with incontinence just exploded. So the proof is in the pudding, as they say, right?
Yeah. Okay. Now, you discovered that bladder health was deeply tied to the nervous system. And yes, it is. And it is influenced by cycles like menstruation and stress. So, in this community, we talk a lot about the energetics of the feminine. So, what has this work taught you about the wisdom of the female body? This is such an interesting question.
Yeah, this is a good one. You're gonna stump me. So I'm gonna share my understanding, though I'm again, and I liked how you put this, the reluctant bladder doctor, because I've never heard that before, in that
Okay.
term. But this would be one of those reluctant questions because a lot of ladies listening to this are gonna say, well, how would he really know he's not a woman?
Yeah.
And the answer is I don't know. But I do observe, and I do have the ability to, kind of sense and see what the women and what life is, about. So I'll just share my experience, not that I actually really know. So
Okay.
the premise behind traditional Chinese medicine is the energies of yin and yang. So yin and yang are really, when you break it down, the feminine and the masculine energies. So women in general are more yin, which is more feminine based. Men are more yang, but
Mhm.
which is more masculine. But we are all in our path to enlightenment, shall I say, are to become balanced. So so back to traditional Chinese medicine is the purpose of traditional Chinese medicine is to balance out the energies of yin and yang. And what happens with many, especially with disease and illnesses, is we have imbalances. So a female should have more yin with yang also, but again, in industrialized worlds like, first world nations, women feel compelled to be more like men, which
Yep.
in my opinion is a huge disservice to humanity because there's no better people to be women than women. And they have something to add that men cannot.
Yep.
And that should be embraced. So I think part of the issue, and it goes back to the stress, is when we can't reconcile things, our body starts to be thrown off balance. And when the body's off balance, then it starts to manifest disease processes. Now, eventually that can turn into huge diseases that end our life, but obviously we don't like to get that far down the path. So it really starts balancing out the feminine and the masculine energy patterns. And that allows the cells, every system and organ in your body, to start to run more efficiently. And that can be influenced by everything from diet to the gastrointestinal tract to hormone levels. But it really starts with the mind of saying, okay, accepting and embracing your individuality. And again, that could take a long time to figure that out, but kind of following your path that feels right to a person. And women in general have a better intuition from my observation than men in general, obviously. But following those intuitive processes is, I think, is the first step to kind of cultivating the femininity. And I've noticed that men and women, but women in particular, who start to embrace who they are and not try to be someone other than that, is where their true healing begins. And that starts again within an acceptance point of view.
That is so beautifully put, Dr. Nigel. You really outperformed yourself in that. That is so beautifully put. Sure, our, especially our female listeners will definitely be so feeling that love and warmth to hear this. And when I mention about love, one of the things I personally found so powerful from your journey is that your healing system was born from love, love for your wife, love for her returning to joy. So, how do you see love, like romantic or spiritual, even collective, as a healing frequency in your work?
No, I think the biggest thing, so again, I'm not an expert on this. I'm just going to give this opinion as a person who's living life like everybody else. There's a lot of different loves out there. So when I speak about love, I think about love as a healing, supportive energy that allows growth, not so much a romantic love. And that love, I think of it like I guess, almost like the sun. The sun shines on everything, right? So if we plant a tree in the ground or a plant of any sort and we give it good soil and water, the sun's going to shine on everything. And how that plant, let's say, uses that energy is really an individually based thing, right? So I think of it as love is the same with people. Is the universe shines as much love as you can handle, it will shine upon you. As little love as you can handle, it'll shine that much on you. And it's really about the individual, right? And so the question I go is, in private practice, I can have a lot of answers and give people a lot of direction and help them a great deal. But if they don't believe it's possible, or then they can't or can't receive it. So love comes no matter what. The reception of that love is all based upon the individual that's, living the experience. Just like the plant is, you're going to get a plant that has light shining on it. How it uses that light and how efficient, that's more an individually plant-based thing. So the same goes, in my opinion, from humanity. So the cleaner conduit we become as I'll talk about the shadows in our mind again, as we start to heal our patterns of injury and wounds and trauma and insecurities. As we clear and purify our capacity, I believe that our ability to receive love increases, because then we start seeing it all around us instead of waiting for it to show up in one specific way that we can feel. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's kind of my best effort.
No, definitely, definitely. Beautiful, beautiful, Dr. Nigel. And before we wrap up, for the women listening who may feel disconnected not just from their bladder, but from their body, their sensuality, their life force, what practices or awarenesses you recommend for reconnecting on a soul level?
So I think the biggest, simplest is to start a very small, easy quieting practice. Now, there's a lot of different names for that too. We'll call it meditation for simplicity, but there's a lot of attachments people have to that word. But you can't change unless you're willing to listen. And modern culture, in my observation, is built upon distraction. So we think about social media, we think about all these different platforms and how they're designed to keep you totally engulfed and distracted, and it becomes an addiction. So so the key to the first step is to be aware of our energy. Where we put it determines the direction of our life. So the question becomes is how do we change directions? Is we take a moment, it can be 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, it doesn't matter, but consistent and start just sitting and breathing. And the whole purpose of that is you can't allow new information in unless you quiet your current thinking patterns. And a lot of the thinking patterns, just like physical patterns in our body, are habits. And those habits have been developed and then they become unconscious habits where we don't even think about them, they just happen. And one of the first things I've noticed how people just sit down and as soon as they sit down, they pull out their phone and they start scrolling. They've conditioned themselves to distract themselves. Well, you can't be open to let's go back to energy again, is you can't be open to energy coming from a greater, from the universe unless you quiet down the racket within your head. So I think about the sun is you can't get the basking warmth of the sun if you are hidden behind your house because the house will block it. So you think about removing those barriers, um, removing the distractions, being quiet and just being and taking a conscious moment to say, I'm going to let whatever is, running the universe to infiltrate my being and purify or open me up to something. And just do that on a regular basis, kinda like somebody would say, "I wanna walk 10 minutes every day because I wanna get more fit," or, "I wanna eat better food instead of eating the quick microwave stuff." So, taking these little habits for your mind over time, that will make changes. Simple as that.
Lovely, lovely. I guess definitely healing the bladder may seem like a physical act, but it's definitely it's really like about reclaiming the self, with its power, presence, and pleasure. So thank you so much for that, Dr. Nigel. And if our listeners would like to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
You just go on my website, www.er, doctor, NIGELBRAYER.com. There's a lot of great information on there. We've got a lot of free seminars coming up. There's just a lot of great resources. So we'd love to connect with you.
Lovely, lovely. I'll have all the links mentioned in the show notes. And thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Nigel, for this super, super enlightening, powerful, and necessary conversation, and for reminding us that healing can come from the most unexpected places. And of course, listening to the body and to each other, it can lead us back to vitality. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Sana.
And to all of my beautiful, lovely listeners out there, if this conversation resonated with you or someone you love, don't let the silence win. There are options, there is hope, and there's nothing more cosmic than returning to your own natural rhythm. Until next time, stay connected, stay curious, and keep flowing with grace. Thank you.